The transport ship landed on the Academy platform with a low rumble that shook the metal floors. Zethkar stepped out of the ship and looked around at his new home for the next year. The Galactic Academy stood before him like a giant crystal mountain reaching up into the purple sky. Other ships were landing nearby and students from different worlds were walking toward the main building. Zethkar was tall even for his people. He stood nearly 8 feet high and his thick armor plates covered his body like natural shields. His bones were 3 times denser than most other species in the galaxy. The Vorthak had been warriors for thousands of years and Zethkar was proud of his strength. He had never lost a fight in his life. He picked up his bag and walked toward the Academy entrance. Other students moved out of his way as he passed. Some looked at him with fear and others with respect. This was normal for Zethkar. The Vorthak were known across the galaxy as the best fighters and strongest warriors. The Academy had started a new program this year. For the first time, they were bringing together students from many different worlds to learn and train together. Zethkar thought this was a good idea. He could show the weaker species what real strength looked like. Inside the Academy, the walls were white and clean. Floating signs showed directions to different areas. Zethkar followed the signs to the registration hall. The room was huge and filled with students from dozens of different worlds. He saw the tall blue Zentari with their 4 arms. The small green pixie people floated near the ceiling. The rock-like granite beings stood in one corner, making the floor shake with each step. Then he saw them. The humans. Zethkar had heard about humans, but had never seen one before. They had only joined the galactic community a few years ago. Looking at them now, he could not understand how they had survived long enough to reach the stars. They were so small and weak-looking. Their skin was thin and soft with no armor at all. Their bones looked like they would break if someone touched them too hard. A human female walked past him, and Zethkar stared in disbelief. She was even smaller than the male humans and looked like she weighed less than one of his arms. Her dark hair was pulled back and she wore the same academy uniform as everyone else, but it looked too big on her tiny frame. This human stopped at the registration desk next to his. The clerk handed her a datapad and she began filling out forms. Zethkar could not help but watch her. How had this fragile creature made it through space travel? How would she survive combat training? It seemed impossible. The human looked up and caught him staring. She had brown eyes and a serious expression on her face. Instead of looking away like most beings did when they met his gaze, she stared right back at him. This surprised Zethkar. Most creatures were afraid of the Vorthak. She walked over to him and held out her small hand. Her voice was clear and strong when she spoke, even though she barely reached his chest. I am Lisa Martinez. I think we are going to be training partners this semester. Zethkar looked down at her hand. It was so small he was afraid he might crush it if he shook it. He carefully took her hand in his much larger one and tried to be gentle. I am Zethkar of the Vorthak homeworld. You are human. Yes, I am, and you are very tall. Lisa did not seem afraid of him at all. This was strange. Even other warrior species treated the Vorthak with caution, but this tiny human acted like his. Size and strength meant nothing to her. The registration clerk called them both over. She was a Zentari with blue skin and 4 arms. She handed them both datapads with their class schedules and room assignments. You two are partners for Advanced Combat Evolution this semester. The class meets every day at morning shift. Do not be late. Zethkar looked at his schedule. Advanced Combat Evolution was the most difficult fighting class at the Academy. Students learn to fight against different species and adapt their techniques to different opponents. It was dangerous and many students got hurt during training. He could not believe they had assigned this fragile human to such a class. Lisa was reading her own schedule and did not look worried at all. She should be terrified. The other students in that class would be the strongest fighters from across the galaxy. One hit from any of them could kill a human. I guess I will see you in class tomorrow, Lisa said. She walked away toward the dormitory. Without looking back, Zethkar watched her go. He felt confused and a little angry. The academy instructors were either playing a joke or they were trying to get this human killed. Either way, it was not fair to put such a weak creature in with real warriors. That night in his room, Zethkar thought about his new training partner. His room was specially built for Vorthic students with thick walls and heavy furniture that could handle his weight and strength. The bed was made of metal instead of the soft materials other species used. He had trained with many different beings over the years. Some were fast and some were smart, but all of them had been strong enough to survive a real fight. The humans he had seen today looked like they would break if someone looked at them wrong. Zethkar decided he would have to be very careful during training. He would hold back his strength and try not to hurt his human partner. It would be boring. But he did not want to accidentally kill someone on his first day. Maybe the instructors would realize their mistake and move Lisa to an easier class. He fell asleep thinking about how strange it was that such weak creatures had managed to build spaceships and join the galactic community. Tomorrow he would find out just how fragile humans really were. The first day of Advanced Combat Evolution class proved everything Zethkar had thought about humans. The training hall was enormous with high ceilings and thick padding on the walls. Students from 20 different species stood in formation, waiting for their instructor. Commander Voss was a granite being who stood 12 feet tall and looked like he was carved from solid rock. His voice boomed across the training hall when he spoke. This class will test your fighting abilities against opponents who are nothing like your own species. You will learn to adapt or you will fail. Some of you will get hurt, some of you might die. If you are not ready for this, then leave now. Nobody moved. Zethkar looked around at his classmates. There were Zentari warriors with their 4 fighting arms, Krellin soldiers with their poison claws and thick shells, savage Bloodfang hunters with teeth like knives and speed that could barely be seen. And there, in the middle of all these deadly fighters, stood Lisa Martinez, looking tiny and out of place. First, we will test your basic physical abilities, Commander Voss announced. Strength first. The students lined up at a machine that measured how hard they could hit. One by one, they stepped up and struck the target as hard as they could. The granite student went first and scored 847 points. A Krellin soldier scored 623 points. Zethkar stepped up and put his full strength into the punch. The machine displayed 934 points and several students made impressed sounds. When Lisa's turn came, she stepped up to the machine and hit the target. The display showed 78 points. Some of the alien students laughed. Commander Voss wrote the number down without expression, but Zethkar could see disappointment in his rock face. The endurance test came next. Students had to run on moving platforms that got faster and faster until they could not keep up. The Bloodfang hunters ran for over an hour before getting tired. Zethkar managed 45 minutes before his heavy armor made him too slow. Most species lasted between 20 and 60 minutes. Lisa lasted 12 minutes before she had to stop. She was breathing hard and sweat covered her face. She looked embarrassed as she stepped off the platform. Other students were whispering to each other and pointing at her. The reflexes test involved dodging balls of light that came from different directions. Students had to avoid being hit for as long as possible. The fastest species could dodge hundreds of light balls before getting hit. Zethkar avoided 67 before one caught him in the shoulder. Lisa avoided 31 light balls before getting hit. She was better than Zethkar expected, but still scored near the bottom of the class. By the end of the first day, it was clear that humans ranked last in almost every physical ability after class. Zethkar found Lisa sitting alone in the dining hall. She was eating something that looked like earth vegetables and reading from a datapad. He sat down across from her with his own meal. The first day is always hard, he said, trying to sound encouraging. You will get better with practice. Lisa looked up from her datapad. Her brown eyes were serious, and she did not look upset about her poor performance. The tests were interesting. I learned a lot about the other species. You do not seem worried. About your scores, should I be worried? Zethkar was confused by her calm attitude. Any other student who had performed so badly would be ashamed or angry. Lisa acted like the test results did not matter to her at all. The other students were laughing at you, he said. They think humans do not belong in this class. What do? You think? Zethkar hesitated. He did not want to hurt her feelings, but the truth was obvious. I think the instructors made a mistake putting you in advanced combat evolution. This class is for warriors. Maybe you would be better in a science program or diplomacy training. Lisa nodded and went back to reading her datapad. She did not seem offended by his suggestion. This made Zethkar feel even more confused. How could she be so calm about being the weakest student in the class? The next few weeks followed the same pattern. Every day brought new tests and training exercises. Every day the humans finished at the bottom of every measurement. They were slower than other species. They were weaker than other species. They tired more quickly and took longer to recover. During sparring practice, the instructors had to make special rules for the human students. They could not train with the stronger species because they might get seriously hurt or killed. Instead, they worked with training robots or practiced basic moves by themselves. Zethkar began to feel sorry for Lisa and the other humans. They tried hard, but they were clearly not built for fighting. Their thin bones and soft skin made them helpless against real warriors. He started helping Lisa during practice sessions, showing her basic defensive moves and teaching her how to avoid attacks. Keep your guard up, he would tell her. Do not try to block my attacks, just get out of the way. Lisa listened to his advice and practiced the moves he showed her. She was a quick learner, but there was only so much she could do with such a weak body. Zethkar had to hold back most of his strength to avoid hurting her during practice. The other alien students began following his example. They treated the humans like fragile children who needed protection. During group exercises, humans were given support roles or kept out of dangerous situations entirely. Nobody wanted to be responsible for accidentally killing a human student. This protective attitude spread throughout the academy. In the dining hall, alien students would save seats for humans and carry their food trays. During physical training classes, humans were excused from the most difficult exercises. Even the instructors began giving humans easier assignments and lower expectations. Lisa seemed to notice this changing treatment, but she never complained. She continued training hard even though everyone expected her to fail. She studied combat techniques on her datapad and practiced moves in her spare time. Zethkar admired her determination. Even though he knew it was pointless. One evening, after a particularly difficult training session, Zethkar found Lisa in the academy library. She was reading old texts about different fighting styles from across the galaxy. Books and data files were scattered across her table. What are you studying? He asked, sitting down beside her. Combat techniques from different worlds. Each species has developed their own fighting methods based on their physical abilities. That makes sense. We Vorthak fight with strength and armor. The Bloodfangs use speed and claws. What about humans? Zethkar thought about this question. He had never seen humans fight before coming to the academy, and their performance in class suggested they had no natural fighting ability at all. I do not think humans have any special combat techniques. Your species seems better suited for thinking than fighting. Lisa smiled at this comment but did not say anything. She gathered up her study materials and stood to leave. I should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be another interesting day. As she walked away, Zethkar wondered what she found so interesting about training sessions where she always finished last. He was beginning to think that humans might be too optimistic for their own good. 3 weeks into the semester, Commander Voss announced that the class would begin full-contact sparring matches. Students would fight against different species to learn how to adapt their techniques to various opponents. Safety protocols would be active, but injuries were expected and accepted. Zethkar felt nervous about this announcement. Full contact meant he would actually have to fight Lisa instead of just showing her basic moves. Even with safety protocols, there was a real chance he could seriously hurt her. Her small body and fragile bones were not built to handle the kind of impacts that other species could survive. The sparring matches would take place in the main training arena. The floor was covered with thick padding and energy shields surrounded the fighting area to protect spectators. Medical teams stood ready to treat injuries. Commander Voss explained the rules to the assembled students. Each match will last until one fighter yields or becomes unable to continue. You are expected to fight at full capacity against your assigned opponent. Holding back will result in automatic failure. Zethkar raised his hand. What about fighting against humans? Should we not be more careful with them? Several other alien students nodded in agreement. Everyone had seen how weak the humans were during training. Fighting them at full capacity seemed dangerous and unfair. Commander Voss looked annoyed by the question. There are no special rules for any species. If the humans cannot handle full contact combat, then they should not be in this class. Lisa was sitting in the front row listening to this conversation. She did not look worried or upset by the commander's words. In fact, she seemed almost pleased by his answer. This confused Zethkar even more. Why would she be happy about fighting? Without protection, the first few matches were between similar species. A Zentari fought another Zentari using their 4 arms to grapple and strike. 2 Krellin soldiers battled with their poison claws, creating a fast and dangerous fight that ended when one got paralyzed by venom. The matches were exciting and showed the natural fighting abilities of each species. Then Commander Voss called out the next pairing. Zethkar of the Vorthek against Lisa Martinez of Earth? The training arena became very quiet. Other students looked concerned and some whispered to each other about the unfair matchup. Zethkar felt his stomach drop. This was what he had been dreading since the announcement. He walked into the fighting area feeling like he was going to execute a helpless prisoner. Lisa entered from the other side and took her position across from him. She looked tiny in the large arena surrounded by energy shields and medical equipment. The difference in their sizes was almost comical. Remember, the safety protocols are active, Commander Voss announced to the watching students, but they will not prevent all injuries. Fighters must be ready to accept the consequences of their actions. Zethkar looked down at Lisa and tried to figure out how to handle this situation. If he fought at full strength, he would probably kill her even with safety protocols, but if he held back too much, he would fail the class. He decided to move slowly and carefully to give her chances to yield before getting hurt. I do not want to hurt you, he said quietly so only she could hear. Maybe you should yield now before we start. Lisa looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. Her expression was calm and focused in a way he had never seen before. She seemed different somehow, like she had been hiding something during all their previous training sessions. Do not worry about hurting me, she said. Worry about yourself. This comment surprised Zethkar. What could this tiny human possibly do to hurt him? His armor plates could stop bullets and his bones were harder than steel. Lisa looked like she weighed less than his left arm. Commander Voss raised his hand and brought it down sharply. Begin. Zethkar started moving toward Lisa very slowly. He planned to grab her gently and pin her to the ground without causing any real damage. It would be over quickly and she would not get seriously injured, but something strange happened. As he approached, Lisa shifted into a fighting stance that looked completely different from anything she had shown during training. Her feet moved into a balanced position and her hands came up in a way that seemed professional and practiced. Her whole body language changed from the clumsy student he had been helping for weeks into something else entirely. This transformation was so unexpected that Zethkar stopped moving for a moment. Where had this stance come from? Why had Lisa been hiding her real fighting knowledge during all their practice sessions? He shook off his confusion and continued his slow advance. Whatever Lisa was doing, it could not change the basic facts about human weakness. She was still tiny and fragile. Compared to his strength and armor, Zethkar reached out with one large hand to grab Lisa's shoulder and end the match quickly. But his hand closed on empty air. Lisa had moved to the side with a speed and precision that caught him completely off guard. Her movement was not the desperate scrambling he expected from a weak human, but the calculated step of an experienced fighter. She was now standing beside him instead of in front of him. Before he could turn to face her new position, she moved again. This time she stepped behind him and Zethkar began to feel genuinely confused. How was she moving so quickly and smoothly. During practice, she had always seemed slow and clumsy. Zethkar spun around to face Lisa, but she was not where he expected her to be. She had moved again and was now back to his side. Her movements were making him dizzy, and he realized he was being led around the fighting area like a confused animal. The watching students were murmuring to each other. They had expected to see the tiny human get crushed immediately, but instead they were watching her make the mighty Vorthic warrior look foolish and slow. Single quote, KAR, decided to stop playing games. He would make a serious attack and end this embarrassing display. He drew back his right arm and threw a punch that should have been too fast for Lisa to avoid. The blow had enough force to dent metal and would end the fight instantly if it connected. But once again his attack hit nothing but air. Lisa had not just dodged his punch, she had moved inside his reach while he was still recovering from the missed strike. She was now standing very close to him in a position where his size and reach advantages meant nothing. For the first time since entering the arena, Zethkar felt a small touch of concern. Lisa was not fighting like the weak creature he had been training with for weeks. She was moving with purpose and skill that suggested she knew exactly what she was doing. Lisa looked up at him and smiled. It was not a friendly smile like the ones she had given him during their practice sessions. This smile was the expression of a predator who had been patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. "Now you get to see what humans are really like," she said in a voice that was calm and confident. Before Zethkar could respond, Lisa moved again. But this time, instead of dodging away from him, she moved toward him with an intention and precision that made his warrior instincts suddenly scream. Warnings he had been ignoring for weeks. Lisa moved with deadly precision toward Zethkar's left arm. Her small hands found the joint between two armor plates where his natural protection was weakest. Before he could react, she struck the nerve cluster there with surgical accuracy. Pain shot through his arm and his fingers went numb for a moment. Zethkar staggered backward in shock. No one had ever found that weak spot before. Most fighters did not even know it existed. How had this tiny human located it so quickly and struck it so precisely? "That is impossible," he muttered, looking down at his tingling arm. "How did you know where to hit?" Lisa did not answer. She was already moving again, circling him like a hunting animal studying its prey. Her brown eyes were focused and calculating as they examined his body for other vulnerabilities. Zethkar realized with growing alarm that she was mapping out his anatomy and identifying targets he did not even know he had. He tried to grab her again, but Lisa slipped away from his reaching hands with movements that seemed to flow like water. She was not just fast, she was efficient. Every step and dodge served a purpose beyond simple avoidance. She was positioning herself for attacks while making him waste energy on missed strikes. The watching students were completely silent now. The expected quick victory had turned into something none of them understood. The weakest fighter in the class was making the strongest look clumsy and confused. Zethkar decided to use his size advantage more aggressively. He spread his arms wide to prevent Lisa from dodging and then rushed forward to pin her against the arena wall. This tactic had worked against every opponent he had ever faced. Even the fastest fighters could not escape when he cut off all their escape routes, but Lisa did something unexpected. Instead of trying to dodge away from his charge, she stepped toward him. She moved inside his outstretched arms before he could close them and placed both hands on his chest armor. For a moment, Zethkar thought she was surrendering or trying to push him away. Then Lisa demonstrated what humans called leverage. She used his own momentum against him by stepping to the side while guiding his forward motion with precise pressure from her hands. Zethkar found himself stumbling past her toward the arena wall. His charge had become an uncontrolled crash that sent him slamming into the padded barrier. As he bounced off the wall, Lisa was there waiting for him. She had predicted exactly where he would be and was already in position for her next attack. This level of tactical thinking was something Zethkar had never encountered from any opponent. "You rely too much on strength," Lisa said as she struck another nerve point near his shoulder. "You never learn to fight smart opponents." The pain from her strike was sharp and focused. Lisa was not trying to overpower him with brute force. Instead, she was targeting specific locations that would disable his fighting ability regardless of how strong he was. It was like fighting a surgeon who knew exactly where to cut. Zethkar tried a different approach. He faked a clumsy attack to the left and then spun quickly to the right, hoping to catch Lisa off guard. But she seemed to know what he was going to do before he did it. She was already moving away from his real attack before he had finished his fake one. "Your telegraphing is terrible," she commented almost casually. "I can see every move coming." From 3 steps away, this made Zethkar angry. He was a trained warrior who had studied combat for his entire life. How could this small human read his techniques so easily when other experienced fighters could not? He launched a series of rapid punches, hoping to overwhelm her with speed and volume, but Lisa flowed between his strikes like smoke. She made his flurry of attacks look slow and clumsy, even though he was moving faster than most species could even see. While dodging his punches, Lisa began her own counterattack. She struck pressure points along his arms and shoulders with quick, precise jabs that sent jolts of pain through his nervous system. Each hit was perfectly placed to cause maximum discomfort while avoiding his armor protection. Zethkar began to realize that Lisa had been studying him for weeks. Every training session where he thought he was teaching her basic moves, she had actually been learning his fighting style. She knew his preferred attacks as balance points and his weaknesses better than he knew them himself. "You have been lying to me," he said between labored breaths. "You have been pretending to be weak." "I never lied about anything," Lisa replied, while easily avoiding another wild swing. "You just saw what you expected to see." This was true, and Zethkar knew it. He had looked at Lisa's small size and soft skin and decided she was helpless. He had never bothered to look deeper or ask about her background. He had assumed that all humans were weak because they looked fragile. Lisa continued her systematic dismantling of his fighting ability. She struck nerve clusters that made his legs unsteady. She hit pressure points that affected his breathing. She targeted joints between armor plates that he had never considered vulnerable. Each attack was small and precise, but together they were breaking down his body's ability to function. The other students were leaning forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were seeing. The human was not overpowering the Vorthik with superior strength. She was defeating him with knowledge and technique that seemed almost magical in its effectiveness. Commander Voss was watching the match with intense interest. His rock face showed no emotion, but his 4 eyes were focused completely on Lisa's movements. He was learning something about human combat, abilities that had never been documented before. Zethkar realized he was in serious trouble. His left arm was mostly numb from Lisa's nerve strikes. His right leg was shaky and unreliable. His breathing was becoming labored from the pressure point attacks. Meanwhile, Lisa looked like she was barely warming up. He tried one more desperate attack, a overhead strike with both hands that would crush anything it hit. It was his most powerful technique and his last hope for ending the fight before Lisa disabled him completely. Lisa saw the attack coming and stepped slightly to the right. As Zethkar's arms came down, she grabbed his left wrist with both hands and used his own downward force to pull him off balance. At the same time, she pivoted on her right foot and drove her shoulder into his chest. The combination of his forward momentum, her pull, and her pivot created a perfect throwing technique. Zethkar found himself flying through the air in a way that should have been impossible given the size difference between them. He hit the padded floor hard and felt something in his shoulder pop. Sharp pain shot through his chest, and he knew immediately that something was broken. The sound echoed through the silent arena like a gunshot. Lisa stood over him, breathing only slightly harder than when the match had started. She looked down at his injured form with something that might have been sympathy. "I'm sorry about your collarbone," she said, "but you needed to learn that strength is not everything." The medical teams rushed into the arena as soon as Commander Voss declared the match over. Zethkar lay on the padded floor, holding his shoulder and trying to understand what had just happened to him. The pain in his collarbone was sharp and constant, but the damage to his pride hurt even more. Dr. Kane was a Zentari, with 4 arms that moved quickly over Zethkar's injured shoulder. Her scanner beeped as it analyzed the break. The bone had snapped cleanly where Lisa's throw had created maximum stress on the joint. "It is a complete fracture," Dr. Kane announced. "The bone healing chamber will repair it in 3 days, but you will need to rest until then." As the medical team prepared to move him, Zethkar looked around the arena. Every student was staring at him with expressions of shock and disbelief. The mighty Vorthic warrior had been defeated by the weakest-looking student in the class. It seemed impossible, but everyone had seen it happen. Lisa was standing nearby talking to Commander Voss. The massive rock being was asking her questions in a low voice that Zethkar could not hear. Other students were gathering around them trying to listen to the conversation. "How long have you been studying martial arts?" Commander Voss asked Lisa. "I started when I was 5 years old. I have been training for 20 years in different fighting systems from Earth." "What fighting systems?" "Judo for throws and grappling, karate for strikes and blocks, boxing for hand techniques, aikido for using an opponent's force against them, some kickboxing and wrestling. I also studied pressure point fighting and nerve cluster attacks." The alien students were writing down everything Lisa said. These were fighting techniques they had never heard of before. Most species relied on their natural physical advantages instead of developing complex combat systems. "Why did you pretend to be weak during training?" asked a Zentari student. Lisa looked surprised by the question. "I never pretended anything. You all just assumed I was weak because I am small and do not have natural armor or claws. Nobody bothered to ask about my background or training." This was true, and everyone knew it. The alien students had looked at human physical test scores and decided that humans could not fight. They had never considered that humans might have developed fighting techniques to overcome their physical limitations. "But you scored lowest on all the strength and speed tests," said a Krellin soldier. "Those tests measure raw physical ability," Lisa explained. "They do not measure fighting skill or tactical thinking. A good fighter does not need to be the strongest or fastest. They need to be smart and adaptable." Commander Voss nodded his huge rock head. "This is a lesson all of you need to learn. Physical strength is only one factor in combat effectiveness. Intelligence and technique can overcome many disadvantages." The medical team carried Zethkar out of the arena on a floating stretcher. As they moved through the academy corridors, other students stopped to stare at him. Word of his defeat was already spreading throughout the school. By evening, everyone would know that a human had broken a Vorthic warrior's collarbone in fair combat. In the medical center, Zethkar was placed in a bone-healing chamber that would repair his fracture. The machine hummed quietly around him while nanobots worked to rebuild his damaged collarbone. He had plenty of time to think about what had happened. For his entire life, he had believed that the Vorthic were superior fighters because they were naturally strong and tough. He had never considered that other approaches to combat might be equally effective. Lisa had shown him that skill and knowledge could defeat raw power when applied correctly. On the second day of his recovery, Lisa came to visit him in the medical center. She brought books about human martial arts and data files containing fighting techniques from Earth. Zethkar was surprised to see her, but also grateful for the company. "I wanted to apologize for injuring you," she said, sitting down beside the healing chamber. "I could have ended the fight without breaking your bone, but I needed to make sure you understood the lesson." "What lesson?" "That underestimating your opponent is dangerous. You looked at me and saw weakness because I am small and soft. You never bothered to learn about human fighting abilities or ask about my training background." Zethkar realized she was right. He had made assumptions based on appearance and physical test scores. He had never tried to understand what made humans effective fighters despite their physical limitations. "Tell me about human combat systems," he said. "I want to understand how you defeated me." Lisa smiled and opened one of the books she had brought. The pages showed illustrations of fighting techniques that used leverage and precision instead of brute force. She explained how humans had developed these methods over thousands of years of warfare and competition. "Humans are persistence hunters," she said. "We evolved to chase prey for long distances until they collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to be patient and strategic instead of relying on quick kills. Our fighting techniques reflect this approach. She showed him pictures of human warriors from different time periods, soldiers who wore armor and carried weapons, but also studied complex fighting systems that emphasized timing and technique over raw strength. Every human child learns some form of martial arts, Lisa continued. We know we are not the strongest or fastest species, so we have to be smarter. We study our opponents and find their weaknesses. We use their strength against them. Zethkar studied the fighting manuals with growing fascination. The techniques were unlike anything used by other species in the galaxy. They required intelligence and practice rather than natural physical gifts. Would you teach me some of these techniques? He asked. Lisa looked surprised by his request. You want to learn human fighting methods. I want to understand how to fight intelligently instead of just relying on strength. You showed me that there is more to combat than I realized. For the next several days, Lisa visited Zethkar in the medical center and taught him basic principles of human martial arts. She explained concepts like leverage and momentum that could multiply a fighter's effective strength. She showed him how to read an opponent's movements and predict their attacks. When Zethkar was released from the healing chamber, word of his training sessions with Lisa had spread throughout the academy. Other alien students began asking Lisa to teach them human fighting techniques. They realized that physical power alone was not enough to guarantee victory against a skilled opponent. The Academy's combat training program was changed to include human martial arts classes. Students from all species lined up to learn techniques that could help them overcome larger or stronger opponents. Lisa became one of the most popular instructors at the school. Commander Voss made an official report to the Galactic Academy administration, recommending that human combat methods be studied and integrated into advanced fighting programs across the galaxy. He wrote that humans had developed the most sophisticated fighting systems known to any species. At the end of the semester, Zethkar returned to his homeworld as a changed warrior. He carried with him data files containing human martial arts techniques and a new understanding of what it meant to be a true fighter. His people listened with amazement as he described combat methods that relied on intelligence rather than brute force. The Vorthic Military Council was skeptical at first. They had dominated galactic warfare for centuries using their natural strength and armor. Why would they need to learn techniques from weak creatures like humans? But when Zethkar demonstrated what he had learned, their attitudes changed quickly. Using human fighting principles, Zethkar was able to defeat opponents who had previously been his equals. He could throw warriors twice his size and disable armored soldiers with precise strikes to vulnerable points. His new skills made him one of the most effective fighters in Vorthic history. Other Vorthic warriors demanded to learn these human techniques. Training academies across the homeworld began incorporating martial arts principles into their combat programs. Within a year, the entire Vorthic military had adopted human fighting methods as standard doctrine. Word of this transformation spread to other worlds. Species that had previously dismissed humans as weak began requesting human military advisors and combat instructors. The galaxy's understanding of human capabilities underwent a complete reversal. Lisa finished her studies at the Academy and became the first human to receive the Galactic Medal of Combat Excellence. She was offered positions as a military instructor on dozens of worlds, but chose to return to Earth to establish a new training program for human soldiers. Entering galactic service, years later, when other species spoke of humans, they no longer mentioned fragility or weakness. Instead, they talked about the dangerous creatures who looked harmless but could defeat any opponent through skill and cunning. Human soldiers became some of the most sought-after mercenaries and bodyguards in the galaxy. Zethkar and Lisa remained friends and training partners throughout their careers. They established exchange programs between their worlds and worked together to develop new fighting techniques that combined the best elements of different species' abilities. The Academy's combat program became famous across the galaxy as the place where students learned that appearance could be deceiving, and that the most dangerous opponents were often those who looked the least threatening. New students were warned never to underestimate any species based